Thank you very much. Welcome to the Starlight Cafe. We're going to go away from the Starlight Cafe in just a minute as I share my PowerPoint here and get it into the right format. Oops, and we have to go back to the beginning. That would be good. Well, here's a bit of a preview of what's going to happen. There we go. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jenna, for that lovely introduction. And I'd like to thank Elder Martha and Mary for getting us started in such a great way this morning, and giving us such a good start to a really good day. I think yesterday was a wonderful day. We learned lots and lots, and I think we'll learn lots today. So I just want to thank you and thank the organizers for the opportunity to share the work of the Early Childhood Education Department at UCN. And I just want to start with a quote from Lillian Katz. She's an early childhood education guru from the United States. And in her book, Developing People, part of the Art of Leadership series, this is what she says. We must come to see that the welfare of our children and grandchildren is intimately linked to the welfare of all other people's children. After all, when one of our children needs life-changing surgery, someone else's child will perform it. If one of our children is threatened or harmed by violence, someone else's child will be responsible for the violent act. The good life for our own children can only be secured if a good life is also secured for all other people's children. Where are other people's children right now? Are they having wholesome, caring, and appropriate experiences? The person who will be our president 60 years from now may be in someone's 3-year-old class today. I hope she's having a good experience. To be concerned about other people's children is not just a practical matter, it is a moral and an ethical one. So I thought that would kind of put us into that context of what we do in preparing individuals to go out and work in childcare facilities has long-lasting and long-term effects. So just before I start, I want to just let you know that we currently kind of are using Indigenous and Aboriginal interchangeably. We will be moving more towards using Indigenous as our term as we revamp our program a little bit in the coming months and years. But for now, it's kind of interchangeable. So I hope that's okay with everyone. So we'll move forward. So Jenna already presented the traditional territory acknowledgement that is in every one of our University College course outlines. So this is an acknowledgement that begins every one of our courses. And here's a picture of our students out on a nature walk with the natural resource students in the PAW. And this sort of begins where we as ECEs in the PAW and Thompson and wherever our program is, we have a big emphasis on partnering and sharing, because partnering and sharing is a key learning for children. And it's the same for our ECE students. We're always looking for ways to partner with programs because it's an important part of their job. Childcare centers that partner with their community resources provide a much richer, enhanced program for the children and the families of the center. So here the natural resource students are giving our ECE students some lessons on the land and on what is around us at UCN, in our backyard in the PAW, basically. So I want to give some thanks. So thanks to the many of our past and present talented ECE instructors, those who have passed through the program and left us with a little bit of themselves and have added something to the program. And this presentation is really a compilation of the work of the ECE instructors for the last 14 years, and mostly from the last 3 and 4. I hope to share the work that some of these very amazing ECE instructors who have trained the individuals now who are caring and educating our most precious resource, our children 0 to 6. Faculty also wants me to acknowledge, and I want to acknowledge as well, 2 of our deans who were incredibly supportive to our program, Dr. Alan Gardner and Dr. David Williamson. Both supported us to pursue the hands-on learning and community integration that has made our program a leader in Indigenous early childhood education. So I believe we really are a leader in Indigenous childhood education, and the other colleges are just starting to catch up with us in these next couple of years as our accrediting body is asking for more Indigenous Aboriginal content into early childhood education. So if we look at the call to action number 12, we call upon the federal, provincial, territorial, and Aboriginal governments to develop culturally appropriate early childhood education programs for Aboriginal families. Well, UCN is where we train the individuals to be able to develop a culturally appropriate ECE program for a community. We have been doing this for 14 years. And like I said, the other colleges are just starting to catch up with us. Here we see the Grand Rapids ECE students as they invited the Head Start children and family to a cultural activity day. The students each had to prepare a cultural activity, then write it up as an assignment for for their family and community course. Activities were bannock making, beading, crafts, and outdoor activities. And by partnering with the community and the culture camp, there was lunch provided, which was great. And some of these students have actually gone on. One for sure has gone on to do her ECE 3. And I think she's now gone on to do her education degree as well. So the UCN program is an outcome-based competency program with our emphasis placed on learning within the context of Northern Manitoba and in particular with Aboriginal communities. So the program emphasizes affirmation of Aboriginal worldviews, values, perspectives, and traditions as an integral part of the program. So one of the big selling points for our program is there are no exams, there are no tests, and there are no quizzes. Students are encouraged to show their learning and the meeting of their competency in a way that works for them. So we encourage things like PowerPoint presentations, posters, activity plans, demonstrations, sometimes papers, pictures, videos, personal reflections, and their leadership within many of our activities. So our program is really, there's kind of 4 programs within our program. So we have a 40-hour evening course, which meets the Manitoba Early Learning and Childcare requirements for training for childcare assistants in licensed childcare centers. It's open to anyone, parents, Head Start. This year we've had a huge number of applicants from Head Start programs from like in the south and the north, all over the province. So we actually had to have 2 sections this spring on our 40-hour course, which was great. On reserve childcare facilities can take part. And high school students in the past, when the government was allowing dual credit, we did have high school students that did come and take the program as well. So then we have our 2-year full-time diploma program, which we would prefer to be doing face-to-face, but of course during COVID we can't. And that's 38 courses with 4 applied learnings within childcare centers. And this leads to an ECE2 designation with Manitoba Early Learning. We have our workplace program. So these are people who have worked in childcare for 2 years. And it's a program where they come to school for 2 days a week, and then they work the other 3 days. And throughout the 2 years, they will finish their ECE2 designation as well. It's a tough program because we're trying to get a lot of information in a very short period of time. They have a lot of homework, unfortunately. And then our last program is our Early Learning and Childcare Certificate, which leads to an ECE3 designation, which is the designation that Manitoba would like to have for those that are directors of childcare facilities. So where's our program? Well, our program is on campus. So the pod just moved in to Mary Duncan School, where we have a little bit more space and we have the opportunity to have a learning lab, and there is a childcare center attached to Mary Duncan School, which we do hope to partner with. We had just moved in. We'd barely gotten through, not even, I think, our first year. And, you know, the pandemic hit and we had to go online. So we're hoping to get back there and hoping to get some plans in for our learning lab as soon as we can. And then, of course, on campus in Thompson, we run the program. And then we've been in many communities, and we've been in the communities in many different ways. In some of the communities, we are there face to face. In some of the communities, we've done distance. In some of the communities, we've done sort of a blended model. So there's been some face to face and some distance learning. Excuse me. But we've been a lot of places in Manitoba. And for next year, I have had a lot of inquiries about our distant workplace in the south, like from Winnipeg. So that's quite interesting that we are now spreading across the province. So our program is really place-based and land-based learning. So we learn from the land by going out when we can for things like medicine walks and nature walks. We learn about the land, the place that we are, and that changes for each program. And so that's going to be, you know, specific to that particular place. And then we learn on the land by taking our classroom outside, listening to the wisdom of elders when we can, because that is the most impactful when we can have opportunities actually on the land, listening to elders in the particular place that something has occurred, right? So we do have a standard curriculum that's approved by our accreditation body, and we're currently going through a revisions process. I had told the faculty, oh, we've got everything, we're really good, we don't have a whole lot to do. And we have decided that we have a lot to do. We still have, we have a few things that we want to rearrange in the program to make it better. And so I think we've given ourselves a little bit more work than we thought we would. But that will be going to our accrediting body in February so that we can begin our new accreditation in October of 2022, hopefully. So each site has its own unique offerings as well. So in Thompson, the Thompson campus uses Mile 20. In the PAW, we've used Guy Hill. When we were in Grand Rapids, they used the Culture Camp in Grand Rapids. And instructors draw from each site the richness of the culture and the environment to enhance the program. And instructors are encouraged to adapt assignments to practical activities where possible, while still meeting our learning outcomes. So this is an example. So the students went to Mile 20 and did some land-based learning. So they had sessions on teepee teachings and soap stove carvings, traditional medicines, teaching, sweat lodge, and sessions with the elders. And then the students brought Mile 20 to the childcare centers and recreated their experience. So they're taking what they learned. So here's some more of the things that they were learning at Mile 20: how to start a fire, how to set up camp, kitchen making the bannock and the food for the rest of the week. And then the students went and set up an outdoor play space at T2 Childcare Center. So it's also an infant toddler program. So they transferred their experience of Mile 20 to the childcare program and passed on their experience with the children. They set up a hunting blind, spruce boughs, fishing rods, fire pit, real wood, camp, pots and pans, wiener sticks, natural wiener sticks as natural wiener sticks. They added ducks and geese decoys, homemade rain sticks, and coffee cans to imitate, and provided some imitating drumming with the children. So they're really taking what they learn from the elders and from our culture camps and bringing it to the childcare centers. And then again, they did it as well at grassroots childcare in Thompson. So they were able to set up a prospector's tent here and a hunting blind. Again, the duck and decoys. So we really try to be as practical as we can with the students. And this is really where some of our students who may not have been academically really strong, they come out really strong when we're doing things on the land and with the children, and we see that with them. So more of what they set up at Grassroots in Thompson. And so in the PAW, we had the opportunity to partner with the education students, and Serena Hicks, who's the daughter of George Hicks, who was an Inuit MLA in Manitoba for a number of years, she came and gave us some teachings, some Inuit teachings. And then I know that from my own classes, my workplace class was able to participate in this. And then I adapted some of our assignments and added a lot of Inuit cultural teachings that the students could then pass on to the children. So we learned on the land. It was cold, and what a better way to learn Inuit teachings. It would not have had the same impact, obviously, if it had been in the classroom. So Serena has actually offered to return to teach us how to build an igloo, and I hope that she will come back sometime and be able to do that. So I spent 7 summers in Nunavut. So having been immersed in the Inuit culture, this was an awesome learning experience for the students. My workplace students had many assignments based around Inuit culture that they then could share with the children. So we participate as instructors always. We also support our students to be able to mark assignments. And sometimes we see them showing their learning that they just can't articulate on paper. So for example, my students that is playing the Inuit drum, I mean, her whole body is part of that, right? You really can't put that down onto paper, but by seeing it and experiencing it, you know, it's definitely a more impactful learning for sure. And then we had as well at that time, Chancellor Edwin Jebb came and shared his story on, he shared his story on the land that it occurred. Students hear the truth of residential school experience and then have a much more compassion and empathy because they have experienced it. We are always cautious when we have presentations of this nature. We prepare students and we work hard to have counselors available for our students in case something triggers them. So, and we also at this teaching, we also talked about the Helen Betty Osborne Memorial that's out at Guy Hill. So our program is very based in cultural teachings, and while there are differences in each site, there are some things that we do try to make sure that are the same across the program. So elders are a big part. They're an integral part of our program. They're invited to share their drum, medicine, traditional child rearing teaching. We make sure that they know they're a support during the students' time in college with personal issues. They've been part of our sharing circles. We've done skirt making and we've done beading with them. Both sites have done drum making, both in the PAW and Thompson, and we've done drum teachings from the local elder, and each student leaves with, they have their own drum that they can take to the childcare center afterwards. We've even, I know that Barb has even done drum making with her distance students in Churchill and Gillam. So we've been doing distance and traditional teachings for a while. Traditional medicines is also a part of our program. So here you see on the left, the students in Thompson braiding sweetgrass. And then in the PAW, we had our students do an assignment where they shared the pictures of traditional medicines and what they were and their teachings on a bulletin board for the rest of the UCN, UCN's students. So we've had teachings on the cradle board. In Thompson, Brenda Furman has done teachings for our students. And in the PAW, Larisha Bercier was an ECE student and then an alumni. And so they shared on their Cradle, on the Cradle board and the specifics to their family experiences and places. Traditional skirt making. We've also done this in the PAW. We had a little bit of, I think we needed some more sewing machines when we did it in the PAW, but this has been something that we share. So students learn the traditional reasons for skirts and then are invited to wear them during any ceremonies. And we also have done rattle making both in the PAW and Thompson. So this was Thompson students. And then we do have some site-specific activities. So in Thompson, the UCN Thompson campus, the daycare is actually UCN's daycare, as opposed to here in the PAW, all our daycares are provincially owned childcare daycares. So in Thompson, we do have a forest and nature school, and this incorporates the land-based learning for UCN students' children. So the students, or the children of our students, can come and be part of our childcare center. Students in Thompson, they've done a little more ice fishing than we have here in the PAW. So going out and ice fishing, making bannock over an open fire, snowshoeing, they did a rabbit snare, and they were going to do, they were planning to make rabbit stew with it, but the next day the rabbit meat went missing. I'm not sure where the rabbit meat went, but the rabbit fur was still around, and they dried it and placed it into the science area in the learning lab in Thompson for the children. Cree language and other language from other cultures were shared based on the students' background. Inclusion words were used, Aboriginal perspectives, and Adele shared traditions. So Adele was one of our instructors and knew her language and would share her language with the students. There's more of the skinning the rabbit, fire starting, and the ice fishing. And one of the things that Thompson does is they go out to a very remote community, an ice road access only community. I have some notes. So going on an ice road community gives the students experiences of northern living. Students come from a lot of different places, remote, small towns. We have had students from East India who have moved to Thompson or the PAW with family. So this is a very valuable experience if they've never been there. I know I haven't yet been to a remote ice road community on the ice road. So this gives us a better perspective of where some of our families may be coming from. If our families are moving into the PAW or Thompson, into the bigger centers, you know, knowing where they come from and how small the community they come from, or how remote the community that they're coming from. So it gives our students a better perspective to build with the families. So Carl did lunch on the ice, and they made tea. And then in the PAW, we have our Supper and a Book program. So Supper and a Book is a grant from Literacy for Life from the Winnipeg Foundation. We partner with the cafeteria to provide the meal and the library to provide the book. UCN families are greeted. They get a goodie bag and then enjoy supper with their family. It's a free supper for UCN students and their family, and it's a wonderful break for students and gives them time to be with their children. ECE students get to practice with families, which is something I wish I had had when I started, because families scared me. So here we have a family that's enjoying supper together and our lovely greeters at the door. And then we encourage children to draw on the wall. We put up some poster paper and they're allowed to make art on the wall while they're waiting for all the families to complete supper. And then sometimes there's a craft as well. Then they transition to the library where they're greeted by the library staff who let families know about our extensive children's book. And we have worked really hard to ensure that we have a number of Indigenous books on various subjects. And then we have time for literacy, reading, songs, finger plays on our theme for the day led by the ECEs. And then there's time for reading either one-on-one with an ECE or cuddling up and reading with a parent. and there's always a cultural component to the event. We also in the PAW participate in the annual FASD walk. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is something students may encounter with children or adults in the childcare field. So we make a point to learn what we can and to support the organization. This also encourages our students to seek out other organizations that support children with additional support needs. And we in the PAW have a traditional medicine walk. We alternate years. One year we go on the walk. One year we've had Fred come in and present his, Fred Stevens come in and present his medicines in the classroom. So it's always an interesting day. Our students also do bookmaking. We encourage them to do them in 2 languages if they can. This particular class had English and Cree and English and OG Cree. And then if we have students who are knowledgeable in their culture and traditions, we encourage them to share them. So Stay and Play is another grant we accessed in partnership. Families and home family childcare providers come to the gym for free play, activities, crafts, and readings. And ECE students write up their preparations, evaluate their performance, and then hand it in as an assignment. And here is Fiona, and she shared her drumming song with the children and families one day. And then we had TP teachings at Guy Hill. And also in the PAW, Trudy has initiated Lunch and Literacy, where we actually take separate a book and we take it out to the community. So we've been to the Family Resource Center, we've been to some childcare homes. So we have tried to expand and stretch out our grant money to encourage to incorporate more of the community. And then we also participate in the fetal alcohol syndrome disorder noon hour lunch lectures when we can, when there's an appropriate topic. So students can be part of that as well. If we look at call to action number 62, I just want to go down to point 2, provide the necessary funding to post-secondary institutions to educate teachers on how to integrate Indigenous knowledge and teaching methods into the classroom. And I think we are meeting that. I think we are doing a really great job in our early childhood education program. So Orange Shirt Day in honor of residential school survivors. It is a highlight or a big day for us. Again, we prepare students for this day and provide access to counselors as needed. And so we participate either in the community if there's a community event at UCN. We have been an audience for education students who were doing a presentation. It's an important day in our program, and we listen to survivors and intergenerational survivors, and we try to understand and be knowledgeable about residential school survivors. I'm still hearing from students, which I'm still a little bit amazed that this was not the history they were taught in school. I'm hoping that that changes over the next few years, that the history is rewritten appropriately. And I say to them, me too, because that wasn't the history that I was taught either. And so I've had to educate myself as well on the true Canadian history. So this is a course example. In this course, student works on the following learning outcomes. They identify the context of children within northern communities. They identify the impact of various social, economic, and family child rearing practices on young children. They identify how to initiate, form, and maintain partnerships. And they develop a plan of action that recognizes and accepts the children's background in order to plan effective programs for children from diverse settings. So in this case, students looked at their own communities, and then they selected another northern community to compare and identify similarities and differences. They got to know their own community, where they live and grew up in, and then expanded their knowledge of other communities as they presented their findings to the group. And students identified that although they have come from different communities or parts of the world, they have more similarities than differences. So Aboriginal perspectives. They create a variety of resources in one of their assignments. So they've done homemade moose calling made from coffee cans and added the northern animals. And then they've printed the name of each animal in English, Cree, and Punjabi, because we did have students that spoke Punjabi. or any other language that would reflect the general population of the children that attend the childcare program. In families and communities, they did teepee teachings, soapstone carving, and they prepared to implement the same activities to the children by transferring their experiences to the childcare program during their applied learning. So I think I have pictures. Here they are doing some soapstone carving using ivory soap. And then I think they had the children create using clay. So Merv McKay did some teepee teaching for the students at UCN in Thompson, and the ECE students participated. It looks a lot warmer there than out at Guy Hill. And then students also prepared canvas teepees. And then they created posters as resources. So to pass on what they've learned to their families or to the children, depending on the age of the children. So in personal growth and development, the students identified the value of each pole. They wrote out a personal philosophy statement, and it was based around their values of what the teepee pole stands for and how those same values are applied to being an early childhood educator. Students have also done a culture day. This was in Thompson. So again, they invited the children from the childcare center to come and participate. They did dancing and drumming. Students brought their drums that they had made for the children to use and experience. They did artwork, reading, singing, both in English and Cree. They did Play-Doh. They made bannock. So they did a lot of activities together. And then the students also invited the faculty and the employees of UCN to attend a little mini folklorama, and each student brought a dish from their culture. And the students created an invitation and posted it around, and they decorated and set up the space to make it inviting to reflect the theme of the event. And this was a huge success and a lot of fun. And I do hope that after COVID, we can go back to these kinds of activities. There was a lunch session on the powwow and regalia, and Jean Moracity facilitated and demonstrated a variety of dances and regalia. So Jean has self-taught herself to dance and make regalia for a variety of dances, and so she shared that with the students. The PAW students did teaching bundles. So index cards to reflect on northern animals, teepee teachings, traditional medicines, regalia, and powwows. The words are written in Cree, the northern animals and colors and shapes. And they were using the sewing machine. This group was using the sewing machine for the first time. But again, these are things that the students can take these cultural teachings into the childcare center with them and further on into their careers as early childhood educators and continue that teaching of our young children as we go. So this was Moss Bag Babies and the Kukum Flannel stories that they were taking into Applied 3. They've created a book of teepee teachings, and they laminated, and it encouraged the children to begin printing of numbers that represented each pole. By laminating the book, the children were able to use washable markers, and then they created the 7 teachings poster, which I showed you before. Here's something really unique that I'm pretty sure no other college is going to. The students in Thompson were able to go to the Manitoba Trappers Association Fur Table in Thompson. So participating in the Fur Table in December, they were unaware of the process that it takes place in the trappers world and the role of those who braid and buy the furs. Even though most of our students come from northern remote communities, they had no experience or exposure to this way of life. And it truly showed an interest in, truly showed an interest in wanting to know more. So when they go back to their communities, hopefully this experience gives them a little bit more comfort in perhaps approaching a trapper and maybe having a trapper come in to their childcare centers. So this was quite an interesting experience for sure for this group of students. So lots of different things at the Trappers Fur Table. Students in Thompson participated in a fundraiser for the powwow. So the students volunteered for this event, and then they pulled it into assignment for planning in diverse setting. And in the PAW, our students volunteered with Trappers Festival with children's activities. The PAW students also provide children's activities at the annual Students' Christmas Party. So we're part of our community, and again, we love partnering, we love sharing, we love being a part of the community. So this was a really big part of the community. So here they are out at the ice fishing, providing some activities for children. And also, I believe they ran a concession and 50-50 sales. So our students in the PAW has done something similar at some events that we've held at the PAW as well. So we've been part of the Truth and Reconciliation Conference. Whenever we can be a part of it, we have been there, whether it's in person or now virtually. And of course, we take part in the powwow. So both Thompson and the PAW have an annual powwow for graduation. So our students, there's teachings on that before the powwow, and then we have our students participate at the powwow, and our students are honored. Our graduating students are usually honored at the powwow. So sharing with others, so that's our program for our students, and I think how we are meeting the TRC recommendations in providing cultural teachings and having our students take those cultural teachings into the Child Care Center, and starting with our youngest ones, you know, these are keeping them going, keeping the cultural teachings going. But we've also shared with others. So we have hosted the Manitoba College of Early Childhood Education Committee Conference. So that's a lot of C's, actually, if you say it. So we've hosted it twice. So we hosted at Mile 20 in 2015, and then we hosted it in the PAW just recently in 2019 at Guy Hill. Both the conferences, we tried to focus on experiencing First Nations culture, Northern Manitoba living, because the delegates have had to come up for 2 days. It's not really a trip that you can come up and go back home the same day. So we try to keep them for 2 days for sure. We've had elders teachings. We've had individuals that were participated in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So again, that firsthand hearing of these experiences, and you know, the integration of doing into the ECE curriculum. So here we are at Guy Hill. Our keynote was Ron Cook, and then we also had again a teaching at the Helen Betty Osborne Memorial. And Fred did traditional medicines, and Christine Enns, who's one of our instructors, she did a thing we like to call Bannock Talk around the fire. So ECE's instructors could just come and sit around the fire and discuss topics, because we all have topics that we share as college instructors. And so sometimes we are able to come up with some good solutions, or some other college has a solution for maybe something that's an issue for another college. Then we had Josephine McKay, our Indigenous curriculum specialist at the time, and she talked about indigenization of the program, which was very timely because all the Manitoba colleges have been called now by our accreditation body to indigenize the ECE program. And then Barb Carlson, one of our instructors, she talked about the forest school in the forest. And the ECE Thompson instructors did a poster presentation on embedding culture and land-based experiential learning inside and outside the classroom. So this was available for people of the conference just to come by, take a look at when they had a break or while they were standing in line for lunch. And then the instructors were there to answer any questions about the program. There was our final group picture around the teepee. And we were graced by the president to be able to host the president hosted a banquet. Unfortunately, he was unable to be there, but it was a lovely banquet. We had a lovely evening together. So that was great. I'm just gonna check on my time. I got just a few minutes. We also have published, or some of our instructors have published. So Barb Carlson is a member of the World Forum Foundation of Indigenous Peoples Action Group. So she's been a few places. She's been to Hawaii, and she's been to a couple of other places as part of that action group, and shared what we're doing up here in the north. We've had an article in Cottage North called From Color Blocks to Rabbit Snares on Indigenous culture integration in UCN ECE classes. Christine Enns has published The Importance of Culture in Childcare in the Manitoba Childcare Association publication Bridges. Barb also published with a group of people in Exchange, which is an American early childhood education magazine. And we had a visitor from Australia. Barb met her at one of the conferences, and Chris wanted to come up and see what we were doing up here. So she came all the way from Australia, all the way up to Thompson, curious about how we integrate culture with our program and how we use the natural environment to enhance childcare. So this was great. So I'm open to any questions if there are any, and I just want to remind you that thanks to childcare, Manitoba works. Without our childcare people, our essential service workers may not be able to go to work because they need a place for their children to be safe. And hopefully the ECE graduates from UCN are also providing a very cultural, appropriate place for our students and for our children. So I'm open to questions. I hand it back to Jenna.